A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah.
Jayam Vishnupad Paramhamsa Parivrajagacharya Asto Tarasata Sri Srimad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Bas Adigaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Mayapur Navadvip Dham ki jai. Ganga Mai Yamuna Mai ki jai. Bhakti Devi Tulsi Maharani ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone. Thank you for returning to our study of Srimad Bhagavatam. We continue the 9th chapter of the first canto. Today's text is 17. This is Dev speaking to Yudhishthira. Tasmat idam daiva tantram vyavasa bharatarshapha tasyanu vihito nata pahi praja prabho tasmad idam daiva tantram vyavasa bharatarshapha tasyanu vihito nata pahi praja prabho. Tasmad idam daiva tantram vyavasa bharatarshapha tasyanu vihito nata pahi praja prabho. Please chant.
Hare Krishna. Tasmadidam devatantram vyavasya bharatavarshabham tasyanu vihito natha pahi praja prabho.
Hare Krishna. Tasmad idam daiva tantram vaivasya bharatar sarva tasyanuhito natha pai praja prabho. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Tashmadidam deva tantram vyasvasya bharatar shaba tashyanu vito nata pihi praja prabho. Hare Krishna, thank you.
Tasmadidam devatantram vyavasya bharatarshava tasyana vihito natha pahi praja prabho. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Tasmatidam daivatantram vyavasya bharatarshava tasyanu nada pahi praja prabho.
Tasmadidam daivatantram vyavasya bharatarshapha तस्यानुविहितो नाथ नाथ पाहि प्रजाप्रभो
तस्मादिदं दैवतन्त्रं व्यवश्य भरतऋषभ तस्यानुविहितो नाथ नाथ पाहि प्रजाप्रभो
तस्मादिदं देवतन्त्रं कास्यस्य भरतर्षभ ताशनाहिता नाथ पाहि प्रभो
Hare Krishna. Tasmad idam devatantram vayavasya bharata rishabha tasyano anatha natha pahi prajaha prabho. Hare Krishna.
Okay, anyone else? Tasmat, therefore, idam, this, daivatantram, enchantment of providence only, vyavasya, ascertaining, bharata rishabha, O best among descendants of Bharata, tasya, by him, anuvihitaha, as desired, anataha, helpless, nata, O master, pahi, just take care of, prajaha, of the subjects, excuse me, prabho, O Lord. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. O best among the descendants of Bharata, Yudhishthir, I maintain, therefore, that all this is within the plan of the Lord. Accepting the inconceivable plan of the Lord, you must follow it. You are now the appointed administrative head, and, my Lord, you should now take care of those subjects who are now rendered helpless. Purport. The popular saying is that the housewife teaches the daughter-in-law by teaching the daughter. Similarly, the Lord teaches the world by teaching the devotee. The devotee does not have to learn anything new from the Lord, because the Lord teaches the sincere devotee always from within. Whenever, therefore, a show is made to teach the devotee, as in the case of the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, it is for teaching the less intelligent men. The devotee's duty, therefore, is to ungrudgingly accept tribulations from the Lord as a benediction. The Pandavas were advised by Bhishma Dev to accept the responsibility of administration without hesitation. The poor subjects were without protection due to the battle of Kurukshetra, and they were awaiting the assumption of power by Maharaj Yudhishthir. A pure devotee of the Lord accepts tribulations as favors from the Lord. Since the Lord is absolute, there is no mundane difference between the two. Translation again. Bhishmadev speaking. O best of the descendants of Bharata, Yudhishthir, I maintain, therefore, that all this is within the plan of the Lord. Accepting the inconceivable planning of the Lord, you must follow it. You are now the appointed administrative head, and, my Lord, you should show, sorry, you should now take care of those subjects who are now rendered helpless. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminate Namane Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravan Pacharne Nirvishesha Shunya Bari Paschatya Deshatarne Om Anjanana Timiranda Syajnana Anjanana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. So today's verse, obviously it's a continuation. First, Bhishma Dev was talking about how time, Krishna in the form of time, moves everything forward. And of course, Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, time is described as the all-devouring sinful enemy, all-devouring time. And so first, Bhishma Dev was pointing out that time is there, working everything out. And then Bhishma Dev also pointed out that everything happens by the will of the Lord. And so in today's verse, Bhishmadev is saying, therefore, because of this, you have to accept that this is part of the Lord's plan. The Lord is time, and the Lord is the providential factor. And so therefore, you have to take up you have to be the administrative head. This is what all this was about. All of the praja, all of the subjects, the humans, the animals, the trees, everything is depending now upon you. Because Yudhishthira is not, as I've mentioned before, he's not just a king. He is now the emperor. He is the king of kings. All of the kings in all of the surrounding areas are controlled by the emperor. And so Yudhishthira is meant to now, after the Battle of Kurukshetra, to take up this position of emperor. So again, you know, we sort of repeat this bit a lot because this is the context. But so Maharaj Yudhishthira was feeling quite despondent, dissatisfied that so many great souls had to die just for this to happen, and he feels guilty that, you know, he's meant to take up this administrative head. He's meant to protect all of the praja, but he's just killed so many. He's taken husbands and brothers and uncles away from, you know, so many of the subjects. So he feels, since he's very dharmic, he feels almost like a hypocrite, like he shouldn't take this position. So Bhishmadev is showing him this is what's going on. There's the time factor, there's the providential factor, and then this is your duty. This is what you do. This is what you're meant to do. So you have to do it, because if you don't, then what was the purpose of all of this, all of the fighting, everything? And so Srila Prabhupada begins his purport giving an example of how Krishna sometimes he will make his devotees go through a lesson so that everyone else can observe that and learn from that lesson. And so here, and of course, Srila Prabhupada also compares it to all the instructions to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. We see that Krishna is putting his devotee through an instructional issue. There seems to be a problem going on. Of course, Yudhishthira and of course Arjuna, when he was receiving Krishna's instructions, they understood, you know, that what the conclusion was. They knew that the purpose of life is to serve Krishna. But the instruction had to be there to show the rest of us, we less intelligent men, how we are to behave, how we are to act. And so just as a mother, she teaches the daughter-in-law, in other words, her son's new wife, she comes in and she doesn't know what her son is used to, right? The new wife. And she wants to make sure that her son is going to have the same standard of life that she's been providing for him throughout his entire, you know, childhood, boyhood, etc., youth. And so, but it's not proper etiquette to just go directly to her and say, this is how you do this is how you do that. No, you're doing this wrong. You know, come on, no, my son deserves better than this. No, this isn't proper etiquette. This isn't polite. This isn't how society works. So what she does is she instructs her own daughter in front of the daughter-in-law. And so she sees, oh, okay, she can observe through the teaching of someone else how to take care of her son, basically. And so this is the etiquette. And so in this way, this is why sometimes devotees, pure devotees, seem to go through troubles in their lives. It's to show an example of how to deal with these troubles, right? So this verse can speak to us in a few different ways, because we aspiring devotees there are many different levels. Some of us are on much lower levels of the devotional progress, and some of you are on much higher levels. And so at first, what comes to mind when I think of this verse is, you know, the verse from Bhagavad Gita, Matra sparsas tu kontaya sitos na sukha dukkada agama. What is it? Is that Did I mix the verse? Is it Agamapaino Nishas?
Agamapaino Nityastam
Yeah,
Sitikshasa Bharata.
Sometimes I say the second half of a different verse when I'm quoting a verse, but okay, good. I got one right. Thank you, Ramasham Prabhu. So the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress, sukha and dukkha, and its disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of the winter and summer seasons. We have to learn to tolerate them without being disturbed, because it's all because of sense perception. What is hot, what is cold, this, that, all these different extremes, the dualities of the material world. It's coming through the filter of our material senses, and so we have to learn to just tolerate that without being disturbed, because we are the spirit soul. And so the example is there that in the winter time, when it's cold outside, we still have to take our bath. So traditionally, taking bath meant going out to the river in the morning before the sun came up and taking a bath in the river. And so that was an austerity. And one also must continue to cook even when it's summer, when it's hot out. And so traditionally, cooking meant you had a fire and you're cooking on it, whether it was inside of the kitchen or you had some sort of out building, but it meant that it's already hot out, but you're still standing right there next to the fire, because that's the duty. So the idea was that you have to do your duty because you know that it has to be done. You have to tolerate it, and you shouldn't be disturbed by it, right? And so for us early aspiring devotees, we just have to learn how to tolerate the things that are happening around us, knowing that everything is happening by providence, Krishna's arrangement. We shouldn't be disturbed by it. And also those disturbances that we are perceiving, it's actually just sense perception, because we're in the material world. We're in these material bodies. The things that are happening around us, we perceive that they're happening to us emotionally, physically, even, because we're identifying with the body. And it's certainly having an effect on us proper, the soul, because since we've exercised our free will to turn away from the divine, to try our own hand at controlling and enjoying, it's affecting us in that way, because we think we are this situation, this body, this country, this whatever. And so when things are happening around us, we're certainly experiencing them, and we are certainly having some suffering, but the suffering is only because of the identification with the body. And so when we know this, we understand that we are spirit soul, we understand that we're different from the body, and so we have the knowledge, the jnan. When we know this, we can at least know in theory that when these things are happening, that we can just tolerate them and move on, because they're not really happening to us. But it's much more difficult to actually practice that knowledge, to apply that, since we do so heavily identify with this body. And so first, like I said, we have this instruction that calamities come like that, but we have to tolerate them. So that's one thing. Another thing is, as we progress on the path of spiritual enlightenment, then Krishna starts using his devotees as examples for others, right? And so then it's not just tolerating these things without being disturbed, as on the earlier levels of spiritual progress, but it's actually understanding that we're just serving Krishna. This is our duty. It's not even a tolerance anymore. It's just, this is what we're doing, and it will no longer affect us when we get to that level, because we will understand that we're engaging in Krishna's service. So if he wants to teach others a lesson through our misunderstandings or mistakes, that's fine. Eventually we don't even become affected by this. So this is very different from what's going on in society. So in society, we see when calamities are occurring, we like to we like to advertise these calamities and show people, like, because we think, we're the only generation to have to go through so many calamities. This year was this, and the next year was that, and the following year was that. And no one in the history of the world ever had to go through so many different calamities, and we are tolerating them, very nicely. We're going through them, and so we're experiencing. And so we sort of brag about the amount of calamities that come to us. We see this in society. This is what we do. And even among aspiring Vaishnavas, we can see this happening a little bit. The thing with that is tolerance, of course, needs to be there. We have to tolerate things, and we have to do so in the proper way. When we advertise our tolerance, so if we get through a calamity and we tell everyone how we got through that calamity, then what happens is, so when we're engaging in tolerance, first of all, dharmically, that puts some pious credits to us. And if we're engaging in bhakti, by the way, while we're tolerating, then it doesn't give you pious credits, it gives you transcendental credits. It's even better. But either way, there's some credits there, right? Those credits then are meant to stay there, accrue interest, and then we're meant to reap the benefits of them in the future sometime. But when we advertise our tolerance immediately, it's like anyway, we lose the credit. We're basically spending that credit immediately, but we're spending it on nothing. It's like, say you did a job and you made $1 million for it. Right. So I did this job and I made $1 million. So instead of putting the $1 million in the bank and letting it accrue interest, or saving it for something, or even spending it on something tangible, instead of doing that, what we do is we use that $1 million to advertise. We make this advertisement that we show to everyone that I did this job and I made $1 million for it. So now all of that money is gone, and the attention that we get from that advertisement is very minimal. Some people see it only runs once. Some people see it and they say, oh, hey, I saw you on that advertisement. But then we see that it's gone very, very quickly. And so we don't have the money to show for it. We don't have anything to show. We don't even have the glory. We got a little bit of glory when somebody congratulated us, but then it's easily forgotten. And so this is what it's like if we are tolerating the happiness and distress that is coming to us, but we are advertising how well we are tolerating that, then we're no longer able to, in the future, have the credit of that. It's just like spending that money immediately on nothing even tangible. It's like you don't even buy a house with it, and you can live in it for a long time. It's just, you're just advertising. So this isn't the way that tolerance works. That's not tolerance. That's putting up with something in order to get some sort of prestige out of it. Like, look how well I did that, right? And so that's the first thing that we have to learn as we're going through, that tolerance means that you actually tolerate it and you don't tell anybody about it. It's just you've tolerated it, you understand why you tolerate it, and that's just how it goes. And then so as we accrue, like I said, depending on what our consciousness is, if we're just doing it because it's the right thing, then we will get pious credits. If we're doing it because we know that that's what Krishna wants us to do, then we're getting transcendental credit, right? And so if we want to keep progressing, then we keep that to ourselves. That's the whole thing with humility. That's a quality that's there that we have to cultivate within ourselves. And it comes naturally if we practice properly with the right consciousness and the proper amount of sincerity. But if we don't, then it's gone. So we have to be careful with what we do. And we have to sort of break free from our material conditioning and how we see the rest of the world going. We have to be careful not to fall into that same pitfall, going out there and talking about how well we're tolerating things. It doesn't help. And so this is just a very lower stage, right? And so eventually we're meant to come. So if we continue with the consciousness, not the pious credits, but the transcendental credits, if we continue bhakti, properly, then we will get to a point where basically we start doing it because we know it's to be done, right? So we've established that. Then we become steady with it. So it's not just that every once in a while we choose to do the right thing. It's most of the time, you know, we're doing the right thing most of the time. We have the proper consciousness, we have the proper detachment, the proper motivation, all of that's there. And so you start doing it instead of from time to time you do it right, you're doing it most of the time the right way, and you're still out of duty, so it's there. Then after that, after a while, because of the result of that, you start getting a taste for it, right? So now it's not that you're doing it because it's the right thing, you're doing it because you actually want to do that. You would now, your default setting, instead of now being engaged in sense gratification, is now the default setting is self-realization. You actually have a taste for it, you're doing it automatically, you want to. When that further develops, that taste turns into attachment. So it's no longer just a taste like you actually want to do it, you're attached to it. So if something tried to take that away, it would be a very bad thing. You become actually attached to that. And then of course, after that, then love starts to develop. When that attachment's there, then it's like it's a natural thing to have an affection for what we're doing. And so this is the process. So once we get to those later stages, then Krishna starts using his devotees as examples, and it doesn't affect these devotees in one bit. It may seem to at some points from the surface, because they're being because we are being taught an instruction through them. So Arjuna, when the Bhagavad Gita was being spoken, it looked like he was confused. It looked like he was nervous. You know, the sweat on his hands, and Gandiva bow was slipping from it, and he didn't want to fight. And so it seems like he's going through this emotional response to being faced with fighting his revered grandfather and his respectable teacher like that. And so it looks like he's going through a really hard time. And here, Yudhishthira looks like he's going through a really hard time. But of course, actually, this is all just meant for us to get this instruction to see how we are meant to act. Not only when we become confused about something like Yudhishthira Maharaj, that we do a service and something unfortunate happens in that service, and we think, no, wait, but I was doing that for Krishna, so what's going on? So Yudhishthira was thinking, I engaged in my occupational duty in Krishna's service, but so many people died. That's so unfortunate. Why did that have to happen? So he's feeling despondent. So from Yudhishthira, we can understand that point. And then also from Bhishma Dev, we can understand another point, that that all of this is in Krishna's hands, and that all of it had to happen. So, for example, we see, this is, by the way, the Battle of Kurukshetra. It happened toward the end of Dvapara Yuga. So when there's a transition to Kali Yuga, there's a big change that occurs there, in the quality of people, the life expectancy, how long people live, the level of intelligence, the level of religiosity, all of these things change. And so to have these powerful personalities walking around, it actually doesn't make sense. It'll actually stop the symptoms of Kali Yuga from coming. And so first, of course, the Kurus had to be wiped out. Krishna understood, okay, no, this is, we need to reestablish some proper religious principles, even though the quality of life is about to be very different. At least, this should be established. And so first he gets rid of the impious, right? And he establishes, okay, here we go. Let's start anew. But at the same time, Krishna needed to rid the world of like the Yadu dynasty, for example, and himself, and even the Pandavas. So the Kurus, Krishna took out in the Battle of Kurukshetra, and a lot of those who were fighting on the side of the Pandavas. Krishna himself and the Yadus, we know the story where, of the cursed piece of lead that got filed down, and so that's both the Yadus and Krishna. So the filings of that lead, because of the Brahmana's curse, they went into they were thrown into the ocean, and they got sucked up into these bamboo reeds. And the Yadus, they thought they were playing with sticks, these bamboos. They were a little inebriated from drinking sake, like rice wine, and they ended up beating each other to death. They didn't realize that they thought they were using sticks. And so this is the way Krishna took away the Yadu dynasty. And himself, the last piece of the arrow that couldn't, or the last piece of the lead that couldn't be ground down, was formed into an arrowhead, and that's how Krishna decided to leave this material world. But the Pandavas, and this is wonderful, and this is a thing that I don't know if everyone picks up. The Pandavas, they left on their own. Krishna didn't need to have a war or stage an innocent sort of fight between brothers and cousins or things like that. It was just, they understood, okay, this is it, this is time. So they accepted Vanapras. They all went off into the woods voluntarily, and they just started focusing on Krishna consciousness. So they were already Krishna conscious before, and they were engaging in their occupational duty in society. But then Kshatriyas, toward the end of their lives, they actually don't take sannyas, they take Vanapras. So they go off into the woods, they disconnect themselves from society. They've already done that. They've done that part of their life. And so now they're meant to go and focus on Krishna. So they go into the woods to the north, and that's what they do. They engage in Krishna service, they meditate upon him, and then they leave their bodies. So they do this voluntarily. So what is to be learned here is that the devotees, they automatically serve Krishna, and they always understand, no matter what's going on. Like we learned from Queen Kunti in the previous chapter. For Queen Kunti, when the terrible things were happening, the calamities were happening, she recognized that Krishna was always there to protect them. And so she realized that actually, when the calamities are happening, I'm more focused on Krishna, because I see that he's actually taking care of us. And so when things are going well, sure, we still understand he's taking care of us, but at the same time, it's just not experienced in the same way. We don't see it. It's like the smasanam vairagya. We get more renounced when we see a funeral happening, because we understand, oh, this person died, these bodies are temporary, I'm also going to die, so now I have to become sober, right? Of course, that only lasts temporarily for most of us, a very short amount of time. But this is what's going on, is that we see that devotees, whatever makes them think of Krishna more and understand that we're depending on Krishna, that is what they're attracted to, even if it means that it's putting you through mental, physical strain, right? No matter what it is, as long as we are able to focus on Krishna, devotees, aspiring devotees, are happy by that, because they realize that this is what we're meant to do. This is what we want to do. And so so this is the higher level then of consciousness, that the devotees will just go through these things, understanding that Krishna is using the devotees to show an example to others. Right. So again, so for the aspiring devotees who are on a lower level, we just need to tolerate these things that are happening, understanding that this is Krishna's plan, and we are meant to continue on tolerating, but doing it for the right purpose, not to advertise it to show people how tolerant we are, But because we understand that, okay, this is Krishna's plan, we're not in control, he's in control. So somehow, even though the things that are happening around me are they're not understandable to me, I don't know why all these bad things are happening, perceived bad things are happening, but I'm not in control. And the good news is Krishna is in control, right? So the devotees then just go on living their lives, they go on serving the aspiring devotees. We tolerate all these things and we continue in our service. And when we chant, we are asking for clarification. We want to be engaged in Krishna's service, but we're also, I mean, we're not necessarily asking for clarification. We're asking to be engaged in Krishna's service, but the result of that chanting is that the clarity comes. Cheto Darpana Marjanam. When we chant the Lord's holy names, then the mirror of the heart is cleansed and we can see things as they are gradually. As the dirt is washed away, it goes from, we see, instead of seeing a very vague idea of what's happening, we start seeing it more and more clearly, more and more detail. And so when that happens, then we start tolerating things for a different reason, because we actually see, oh, that is Krishna's plan, that's what he's doing. So then we can go along and serve in a proper way. We can, do the right thing, choose the proper services. And so this is the progression. So first we tolerate without any expectation of reward for said tolerance. We just do it because it's meant to, that's what we're meant to do. We understand Krishna's in control. Then we become attached to that. Then we see how Krishna's in control, and then we act along with what Krishna is doing. And so this is a big gradation, by the way. It's not just that, there's one and then there's the other. It takes a long time to get from tolerating something without any respect for anything in return to actually being, an instrument that Krishna can use to teach others an example. But we have to understand this, and we have to be aware of it. And either way, whichever level we are on, our consciousness is meant to be, okay, how can I serve Krishna the best? And that is through leaving behind this notion that we are in control of things, that we're the center of things, so that we can influence the world independently just by, having a good idea. Oh, if the world just did this, then it would, like that. We have to leave that consciousness behind, that self-centric consciousness, and tap into the Krishna-centric consciousness to understand, okay, Krishna's in control. He's making all of these things happen. I don't understand it, but I'm going to go along with it because I know that that's what's happening. So it starts there with that consciousness. And then once that consciousness is there and we start acting according to Krishna's plan, then things become more and more clear. And then eventually we can hope to get to the point of Arjuna and Yudhishthira, where Krishna actually just uses us to show others, the proper way to deal. So no matter what on the path, we're still just being tolerant the whole way. It's just in the beginning we may be begrudgingly tolerant, and then as we progress, we become more voluntarily tolerant. But the consciousness is the same throughout, from the beginning to the end. And if the consciousness isn't there, we will find that we're not going to make that progress. The progression won't happen. So I think we've sufficiently covered that, and it's also 8:30, which is the time that I'm meant to stop for questions. That rarely happens. I usually go over. So if there are any questions or comments or additions, please let me know by raising your hand or unmuting yourself. I see with a concept like this, what we talked about today, we could have gone for different examples. We could have talked about the actual calamities that are happening around us, and given examples like that, because that's what's happening. People talk about these things. But I wanted to do this in a more general sense, because I find when we talk about specific things, we sort of get off. We sort of get distracted with that detail instead of understanding. Vishnu Gada Prabhu, you have your hand up, please. Please, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. You mentioned about the two kind of levels, the more new devotee who's just tolerating doing their service, and then a different, more progressed or advanced person seeing it as Krishna's using them in Krishna service. There's a lot of different categories of advancement in Krishna consciousness. For example, Kanishta Adhikari, Madhyama Adhikari, Uttama Adhikari, or Adao Shraddha, Tatasa, beginning, the different levels. In this case, where would you put this dichotomy of new and next, the advanced, in what context would you put that? Or if you've read about this dichotomy someplace where it might be described a little more, from different scriptures.
Thank you for that. Yeah, so I mentioned that it's more of a gradation, and I also spoke of, I don't know if everyone picked up on it, but when I talked about engaging in the process, that's actually when you started talking about Shraddha Bhajana. So it started with Bhajana Kriya, and then it became, more steady, and then the taste, and then attachment, and then the love. So I'm sure you picked up on that. I don't know if everybody did, but I don't know if I could say exactly where it would change from the two that I mentioned, because there's a gradation, but I'd say it would be somewhere near the steadiness, between steady and taste, because we become steady, but it's still out of a duty. So that's there. So that's still tolerating. So once the taste is there, from, like I said, between that steadiness and taste, I think that's probably, but I mean, Krishna can use a devotee as an example anywhere in there as well. So it's sort of like, these overlapping gradation. I don't know if I can't recall reading anything that would specify that. If you have, then if you could share that with us, that would be wonderful.
I don't have any. I just want.
Okay. Yeah, this is just going by that. Yeah, you could see that it's not always just like a cut and dry thing. We like to make charts and boxes because it's easier to memorize and things like that. But it's more of a principle thing, where the overall principle throughout the whole thing is that we're to redirect our consciousness from self-centric to Krishna-centric. And so as we sort of move that dial from self-centric to, as we become more Krishna conscious and less self-conscious, then we sort of go through that, and at any part during that, if Krishna sees fit, he can use us as an example. But from our perspective, we're more being tolerant instead of seeing that this is, so it can both can be happening at the same time, because Krishna can see that some example has to be made, and he can use someone on a lower level. But from our perspective, we could just be, seeing that we don't understand that part. We're just seeing that, okay, this is what I'm meant to do because I read this here, and I know that that's what I'm supposed to do, even though my natural inclination is to, do what I've been doing the rest of my life, enjoying materially. So yeah, it could be that they're just also simultaneously happening. But from our perspective, we're seeing it one way, and from Krishna's perspective, he's seeing it another. Those are all possibilities. Thank you for that. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to that, Prabhu?
No, that's okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Anything else? Suman Sharma, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Very, very nice class. Very purifying. And when you were mentioning the different stages of tolerance and they may overlap, but when we reach to the highest stage, so that means we are more purified. We get, as we move through the different stages of tolerance, so we keep getting more purified. That is the meaning of that. When we reach to the highest stage of love, that means complete purification, or just
Yes, there's more purification there. Yes. So we're here in this material world because of polluted consciousness. So we hear this term that Srila Prabhupada uses. He says false ego. And so sometimes early on, we don't understand why he says false. It's just ego. It's ego, because here in this world, when we think of ego, we think it is a bad thing. It's, thinking that you're the sinner. But that's actually false, because there's the real ego. The soul is the real ego. Ego just means the sense of I am, understanding one's individuality. So that's real ego. That's the symptom of the soul. So this false ego is what we have. It's what when our consciousness becomes polluted, and instead of thinking I am servant of Krishna, we think I am an independent entity. I am an individual controller enjoyer. Then that's what's called polluted consciousness. And so as we redirect that consciousness from I am independent controller enjoyer to I am servant of Krishna, then through that process, the consciousness is becoming purified. So you're exactly right. That's the level of purification is there. So, and as we mentioned, the Chaito Darpana Marjanam, that's cleaning that dirt off, that pollution off of the consciousness. And so we're starting to see clearer and clearer. So that purification is happening. So yes, that's exactly what is going on.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Also explained the difference between false ego and ego. Thank you.
Yeah, that one, it took me a while to get that. I read it and I understood, okay, well, this is something Prabhupada says. But then when I actually caught that, I thought, well, this is an important thing to realize. It's not just that he says it, he's not just wasting a word there. It's an important thing. But yeah. Archana Bhakti Mataji also has her hand up.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. It is a very basic, important part of Krishna consciousness to practice this tolerance. And I have a very hard time. So I want to ask you, how do we even begin practicing tolerance?
Well, it used to be easier because, like I mentioned, the whole bathing in the wintertime and cooking in the summertime, it used to be easier because we just had to do it. These days, modern society tries to take away austerity. And so they make things like air conditioning and hot water heaters. So even with our simple daily duties, there's no austerity. And that's actually detrimental to not have austerity. So what we can do, and it's not that we want to put ourselves through pain. That's not what austerity is. And this is a common misunderstanding too. It's just that we have to step out of our comfort zone. It means we have to be willing to do something that's inconvenient to our just normal material conditioning in order to do something for a higher purpose. In our case, for Krishna consciousness. In other people's purpose, it's just for piety. They're still doing something for a higher purpose, but they want to actually reap the benefits of it in the future in a heavenly way, like in the heavenly planets. Of course, we just want to return to our original position. We want to go back to the spiritual world. We don't want to mess around with heavenly pleasures. So it just means that we have to. Tolerance just means willingly stepping out of our comfort zone because we understand that something is the right thing to do for Krishna. And so for each of us, that's a different thing. We all have very unique conditionings. different layers of goodness, passion, and ignorance that are quite unique to each of us. And so as far as details goes, it'll look different for all of us, what we do to practice this tolerance and to build up that and to do that austerity. But what we can do is we can take a look at how we spend our day, what we put our time and energy into, and in some cases how we spend our money. It's really how you spend something, but I always talk about time and energy because I have no money. But time and energy is the more important thing anyway. We look at how we spend those things, our time and our energy, and we identify if we are actually consciously thinking of Krishna in any of those things, or if we're just following our standard like life. In other words, if we took Krishna out of the equation, would we still be doing those exact same things, or would we be doing them differently, like that? So first identify that, and then to think, okay, now what can I do to bring that consciousness more toward Krishna, to leave just my automatic default, material conditioning behind. And so little by little. So if we're going with time, say for example, we put aside, it can even start really easily, like an hour, or you can get 5 minutes a day or something like that. But we have to put this specific 5 minutes, and it's only going to be for this, whether it's study of Shastra or more focused chanting like that. And we have to, even when it's inconvenient, so something might happen exactly at that time that, oh, it's going to pull you to do something else. Maybe it's a sports game that you like and your favorite team is playing their rival or something. And so you may be tempted to do that. No, but I set this time away. So that's a little austerity, right? A little tolerance, because now you have to wait and watch it 10 minutes later. So it starts with little things like that. But when we build these up, when we do it, because basically it's us showing Krishna that to us, we are not the most important thing. Krishna is important. And at first it's not even that Krishna is even more important. It's just that for a moment in time, for 5 minutes in the day, we're showing Krishna that we're at least willing to accept him as some sort of valuable attribute to our lives, right? And that's really all that it is. It sounds embarrassing when we say it like that, but that's what it is. And then gradually we're doing that more. We're doing that more for Krishna, less for us. And so it's just gradually leaving that conditioning behind by voluntarily stepping out of our comfort zone, because we understand that this is what we're meant to do. So whether it's, like I said, studying Shastra more, that's a really good one, or chanting more, another good one, or engaging in different kinds of service. But it's really important that the consciousness be redirected, not just that you're doing something different. Did that answer your question, Mother Archana Bhavi?
Yes, Prabhuji. So my question was, I think you answered it, but I'll just tell you.
Yeah.
It's not so much about tolerating the weather or things like that. It's more like reflex actions, usually it has to do with, anger and, just acting on impulse. So tolerating the urge of, the mind, or you can say of speech, tolerating the urges to speak and the urge of the pushings of anger. So that is a conditioning, isn't it? We are conditioned, so looks like we don't even get time to reflect on it, and it just comes out, and then you sit and worry about, you feel sorry, why did I do that? And then again, the next time it happens again and again and again. And then it feels like, how do I overcome this? So I think you answered the question. So the problem is the conditioned state. So you start with a small thing somewhere, and then build on that. Is that what you said, or is there anything else you can add to address this situation?
I mean, basically that's it, and then we continue to increase that. It's hard to give, you know, because we're talking principle here. Because if we start talking about details, it's a very different thing, and we get distracted by it. But the principle is, yeah, to step out of the comfort zone, to do something that you know is what Krishna wants instead of what your material tendency is, and then to increase that. And the beautiful thing about it is, in this process, when we do that, when we actually do that, we see a tangible result in our lives. And because we see that tangible result, we do more. That's how we move from bhajana kriya, which is practicing out of duty, to becoming steady with that. We start making the right decisions, you know, more and more when we start seeing the results. So it's like, oh, occasionally I made the right decision, and I was rewarded. And every time I don't make the right decision, I'm miserable, right? And so we do it more, and so we become more steady. And then as we become more steady, then there's some taste, and then there's some attachment, you know, like that. So it increases like that because the results are there. Now, the important thing that I always try to point out in this is, if we think that the result is happening as a product of what we've been doing, the result of our bhakti is because of I did this, then that's back to self-conscious. So we're trying to get the Krishna conscious. So if I think, oh, see that, I just did that, and we become proud of it, and we think that our action actually produced that result of bhakti, then we go back to thinking that, you know, we're in control instead of Krishna's in control. So a lot of times, you know, we make some progress, and then we throttle back down because, you know, we're missing the point. We're thinking that there's something that we did that got us there. And so that's another important thing that always keep in our minds. And that's why, you know, those early stages are sort of difficult to get through, because, you know, we're making progress, but then we're proud of that progress, and we think it's something we did, and it, you know, minutely it's something we did. We made the right decision, but then we made the wrong decision by thinking that it was us, you know. So for a while we sort of, you know, live in that realm until we're able to get beyond it. But yeah, if we focus on that principle, if we understand what we're meant to do, and that's really it. If we're focusing on that principle, then we won't fall into that trap of thinking that, you know, we are the reason for that progress. You know, we see that, no, that's Krishna, and so we just keep progressing like that. And so yeah, if we just focus on that principle and we keep increasing it, then naturally that'll happen, because the attachment will grow, that taste will be there, and then it'll turn into love, and then it'll be spontaneous. It won't even be out of duty. It's just what we do. But that's the process. And as long as we keep that principle in mind and keep increasing it, and you know, keep observing the changes and understand that, you know, doing it in a detached way, then this is good progress.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Sure. Ram Sham Prabhu, you have your hand up as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for a wonderful session, Prabhuji. It's really practical, and I know for that you went throughout the session for conditioning and for tolerance. So it was really helpful and totally practical. As in the verse and purport, you know, like Prabhupada said, like Lord teaches to the devotee through the devotee. So you are really teaching in this session, you know, being a devotee to the devotee. So it's really helpful for me. So thank you so much for a wonderful session. That's just comment, Prabhuji. I don't have questions.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Dronacharya Prabhu also.
Hare Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu. Thank you for a really, really nice class. This topic of tolerance, I find it applicable. I'm sure, you know, all the devotees do as well, but really in our everyday life. I mean, it pops up at all, at all times, even when we least expect it the most, where we're tested to execute and practice this principle of tolerance. I was thinking in terms of kind of justice, and sometimes there's this conflict that may go on between tolerate or seek justice. And I think that's, for me, what I've been seeing a lot is this element come into play. And oftentimes, really from the beginning of our lives, we're just taught to fight for what we want. Don't take no for an answer. If something isn't there, find a way to get it done and keep fighting. And so sometimes we may run into a brick wall. So it may be at our workplace where, somebody else got the job, you didn't get the job. And you may feel like, well, that's unfair. I think I was the most qualified person. Or it could be in another aspect of our lives, an aspect of our family life, an aspect of our service life, where we just feel that, the door should have been open, but it's not open. And therefore I have a decision to make, either to fight for it or just to tolerate the situation and accept that maybe this is Krishna's arrangement altogether. So then there's this, I guess, the conflict that kind of goes on. How do we we approach that? What's the way that we should try to, do this? Because like I said, it comes up if we're observant, these things come up almost every day.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's an important one too. So the short answer is detachment. How do we deal with detachment? So it took me a super long time to learn the beginning of this lesson. So notice I didn't say to learn this lesson because there's still a lot to learn. But to learn the beginning of that lesson took me a very long time. I used to think, I even had a prayer that I said every night that was asking Krishna to make it easier for me to understand, to distinguish the difference between a test from Maya and mercy from Krishna. Because I thought, because sometimes something, Maya's testing us, and so we don't want to fail that test, right? So we make a decision based on that. But then sometimes we think, well, wait, maybe that wasn't Maya's test. Maybe that was Krishna's. Maybe Krishna was telling me that I should be doing something, And the mind is like that. The mind will tell you, even if it's like just blatantly a test from Maya, it'll be like, oh no, this is Krishna's mercy. You're meant to do this. You're meant to, go out and enjoy your senses. Why else would he facilitate this? So sometimes it's, it's more obvious from an outsider's point of view to see, oh no, man, that's totally a test for Maya. And so anyway, I had this notion that it's possible that you could miss out on Krishna's mercy because you thought it was a test from Maya, and vice versa, right? So I had this in my head, and I wanted to figure out a way through that labyrinth. And so I'd pray to Krishna for that clarity. And so many years, over a decade, honestly, where I was struggling this, where, like you said, it comes up day by day. And so I'd ask different devotees what their opinions were. And, I didn't really get many answers that satisfied me. And then one day I just got this simple answer, and I just wanted to hit myself in the head, because here's the thing, is if Krishna is giving you mercy, if you're seeing it as a potential test from Maya and therefore reject it because you don't want to fall down to Maya because you want to serve Krishna, it's not that you're going to miss out on Krishna's mercy. That's impossible. You can't miss out on Krishna's mercy. He'll see that the reason you made that decision to reject it was because you were afraid that it might be a test from Maya, and therefore you're going to get more of Krishna's mercy. it's not like a thing, like here is, this bottle is Krishna's mercy and I rejected it, so now I no longer have it. That's not how Krishna's mercy works. It's not like a thing like that. It comes to you when you deserve it. And so if with the consciousness that you rejected it with was actually Krishna conscious, then you're getting more of Krishna's mercy in a different way. You can't miss out on Krishna's mercy, right? And this, and so the same thing. So we have to do things in a detached way and with that focused consciousness. Because if our consciousness is focused, we can't miss out on Krishna's mercy, and we don't have to worry about Maya, because Maya is just serving Krishna, So when we make that wrong decision, then, so all we can do is try our best and be detached. So there are some things that, like you said, we're taught to fight for certain things, tooth and nail, and other things we're meant to just accept. And it's difficult to understand which one we're meant to do at any given time sometimes. But the thing is, it's not whether we should fight or tolerate that's important. It's what our consciousness is while we're either fighting or tolerating. Because we can fight for something with the consciousness that I'm in control. And we can also tolerate things with the consciousness that I'm in control, and also vice versa. We can fight for Krishna and we can tolerate for Krishna. So it's not the thing that we're doing, either fighting or tolerating, that's important. It's the consciousness. We want to make it the thing, and we want to make sure everybody else is doing the same thing we are doing, because we have the consciousness, this is the thing, right? Tolerate or fight. But it's not the thing. And so when we become, this is why I always talk about principles and details. When we get caught up in these details and we think, oh, no, this is clearly the right thing in this situation to do, we should fight for this because that is absolutely wrong. We want justice, right? Well, it's possible that one person is fighting for justice with the proper consciousness, but if he's gathering a group of others to fight, not all of them are going to have that same consciousness. So they may be now doing the wrong thing because their consciousness is not proper. So the consciousness is the most important thing, and detachment. So we figure out with our consciousness, which would be the right thing to do. Should I fight for this or should I tolerate this? If we make the right conscious choice for Krishna, we're not doing this for ourselves. We're not doing this for society. We're not doing this for anything but for Krishna's service. Whichever one we're doing is going to be proper, because it's with that consciousness that we made that decision. Now, whether it works out or not, that's up to Krishna. Whether we fail and Krishna was using us to show an example, or whether we just misunderstood Krishna's plan, or if Krishna's plan changed, none of that is in our hands. So we do the thing that we understand this is what we should do for Krishna, and we do it. And we are detached, and that's the trick. And this is one of those easier said than done things, but that's the trick, and that's what we have to do, and that's what we have to keep doing. But definitely we shouldn't get caught up in the, which one is it, fight or tolerate? Because last time I fought and it didn't work, so this time I'm going to tolerate. Well, this time maybe I should have fought, So we don't get caught up in the things. We get caught up we focus on what's the principle there, what's the consciousness. And so if we do that, then we will be successful. And that's the only way we can become successful. If we get caught up in the details, we're going to be confused for a very long time. Did that address your point, Dronacharya Prabhu, sufficiently?
It did. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I also wanted to give a little kind of like an apology, or maybe even a disclaimer for today. I was again, I was speaking with less energy than I usually do. Again, I'm here with my hosts in the house, and there was a late night. We usually go to the stores on Mondays. We ended up getting back really late, and so I'm trying to keep it down. And so when I try to keep it down, also my energy level seems lower. So hopefully at least the message still got out, even without me waving my hands and talking louder. Generally, when I talk about these things, I'm much more animate about it. But anyway, so apologies for not having that level of energy go through the old internet. But hopefully hopefully something got out there. Anyway, we chanted Krishna's, Bhishma's words, so Krishna's instructions. So either way, it's successful.
I think it came through on our end.
Okay, good. You're too kind, though, and you're also biased, but thank you.
Okay, if that's the case, then I will second him. You came through loud and clear.
Okay.
A lot of things for us to think about. It's so nuanced. It's not, like you were saying, black and white. We really have to look within and really hard and see why we are doing what we are doing. Lots of learned a lot today.
Yeah, it's amazing how the more we learn about the process of Krishna consciousness, the more we realize that it's really just that one principle, that whether we're doing something for Krishna or ourselves. And so in one sense, it's a very simple thing. But the application seems difficult because we're very much attached to our material conditioning. And so it can seem like a lot of things. But that's the beauty of it. The more we read, so we see all these books. So back when I was a very, very young aspiring devotee, it was daunting to look at that many books on the shelf, the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Chaitanya Charitamrita and all the small books. And I thought, there's no way I'll ever get through it. Meanwhile, I watched a collection of movies that would take up way more shelf space than those books, and I retained all of that information from those things. But somehow I was daunted by these books. But as we go through them, we study them. We think that we're gonna have to retain all these different things, and in this situation it's like this, and in that situation it's like that, and and there is some of that in the Vedas, but really what it's doing, it's all, Krishna says it himself, of all the Vedas he is to be known. So it's all just about understanding him. It's all about redirecting that consciousness. So the more we understand Krishna consciousness, the simpler it becomes, which is fantastic. But if we just understand that point, and Krishna gives it to us right in Bhagavad Gita, it's not that we have to study all of it to get to understand, oh that's what the point was. No, it's always there. And Srila Prabhupada just says it in like so many different ways that we think it's something different that he's talking about, but really it's always just the same exact thing. The message is always the same, trying to reach us, because we're all in different areas. So like when you're giving directions to someone, first you have to figure out where they're coming from, and then you can give directions. So the directions are all there. No matter what you're reading in Bhagavatam, it's all going to redirect your consciousness from whatever you're doing to Krishna, putting him in the center. But since we're all coming from different areas, it's explained in different ways so that we can catch it. So that's the amazing thing about this philosophy. But if we catch that, just like what's the verse about the small reservoir can be served by the ocean, just like the one who knows the purpose of the Vedas. There you go.
Yavanartha udapane sarvatah samplutodake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanatah.
Jai Jai. Yes, so if we understand the purpose of the Vedas, which is to understand Krishna, to redirect that consciousness, then every bit of the Vedas is there. We have access to all of it just because we know that one point. So whatever gets us there, whatever kind of examples gets us to that point. But we always have to focus on that, not the details. And that's how we navigate ourselves through the modes of nature. And we think that we're controlled by the modes of nature, and we see, and to an extent that's true. But when we say it like that, we feel it's almost as if we're inferior to matter. We think that, but we're not. We're eternal spirit souls. The only reason we're currently getting our butts kicked is because we've identified with the body. We've our consciousness has become polluted, and we've tried to be independent controllers and enjoyers of things. So that's why we're getting our butts whooped. But material matter can't beat spirit ever, unless we have material consciousness. As soon as our consciousness switches from material to spiritual, then nothing can affect us once we do that. And so, yeah, it's just how things work. It's a science. It's a beautiful science. If you do the experiment right, you get the right results. If you don't, you won't. It's like that. Anyway, I've gone on way too long. Thank you for tolerating me, everyone. It's funny that the verse was about tolerance, and you had to tolerate me today, going over and babbling. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Krishna Conscious Day. We'll see you all again tomorrow at 7:50.